Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Share your whale photos and become a citizen scientist. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Lilia Gonzalez and her special guest, co-founder of Happywhale, Ted Cheeseman. Thank you so much for being here today, both of you. Lilia, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Kendall, and thank you so much, Natural Habitat, for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody, for tuning here today. As Kendall was saying, we have a very, very special guest today. I am very excited. So I'm going to introduce myself before we continue, and after that, I'm going to let Ted to do its presentation. Something is happening here. Okay, there you go. So as I was saying before, my name is Lilia Gonzalez. I'm an expedition leader for Natural Habitat since 2018, but I started working with whales and marine mammals since 2004 or 5, so quite a long time. Sorry about my dogs are barking, but I cannot control on that. I have been working with whales for many years, and when I started some projects with whale watching activities, I started also to share my pictures with this great project that is Happywhale. It is a project that we are going to be talking much deeper today. And for that, I'm going to introduce Ted. Please, Ted, tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you. Cheers. Hey. I'm actually a longtime expedition leader as well. I run my own little company, Cheeseman's Ecology Safaris, but about 6-7 years ago, really was drawn to get back into science. I did a master's in conservation biology and then came back and worked for the family company for some years, and now am turned mostly back towards science, kind of wearing two hats. So I mostly guide in Antarctica, and in the time since I started guiding in Antarctica in 1994, so that's 27 years ago now. Back then we saw almost no whales, and historically that's where there was more whaling than anywhere else on the planet. So it's kind of the stark contrast. You go there and you feel like, oh, there's no human impact is what you see, but actually the reality is we had a huge human impact. And over the course of the years down there, we started seeing first a few whales and then more and more, and now a lot of whales. And so, back in 2013, 2014, I really wanted to better understand the story there, which led me to this path of developing Happywhale, which is this notion like, hey, there's a lot of data out there that we tourists and guides are seeing and photographing that could really benefit the science. And also I wanted at the time to get the science much more accessible. So we built this. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing this first information with us. And we are going to go a little bit deeper into this beautiful project. Something that is important about our webinar of today is that it's going to be a little bit different than the other ones that we have been doing. This time is going to be a shorter presentation, and we are going to open it to Q&As. That way, you guys, our guests, you're going to have more time to interact with Ted. Okay, so let's begin. So this is the start of the Happywhale project, at least at the beginning. These are the humpback whales. The scientific name is Megapteranovanglia. Megaptera means big wings, because as you can see, the pectoral fins of these whales are quite big, 1/3 of their total body length. And Novanglia, it was because, well, the species was described in New England for the first time. We are talking about very big, gentle giants. Their length is 40 to 50 feet. Females are a little bit bigger than males. The weight, 40 tons around. The lifespan, they can live a little bit longer than 80 years. And the diet, well, they are filter feeders, so they are going to be having some krill, small crustaceans, and of course, schooling fish. About the population, as Ted was saying, there are some good numbers about these whales. They have a distribution worldwide, and the population is pretty much split into subsets or different populations. In 14, to be more precise, you have the list there below. And the colors, as you can see in this map, the blue colors are the populations that are not at risk, and other ones that are endangered, the pink color, and the yellowish one is a threatened population. The number 5, the yellow, it's the one that is here in Mexico during the winter or the breeding season, and they are moving a little bit north to well, United States, Canada, and Alaska to their feeding grounds during this time of the year. So as you can see, we have all those populations around the world, and they are recovering after the whaling times at the beginning of the century. But how can you identify a humpback whale? Well, they have some identifiers pretty much at their tails. They have markings, scratches, and other scars on the underside of the tail flukes. As you can see, the edges can be a little bit irregular. They can have some scars. So that is pretty much the fingerprint of a whale. Every time they are showing the tail, it's pretty much that they are like doing this. They are showing the fingerprint, and that makes them, well, it's a very unique feature of each whale. We can compare in these pictures. Some of the whales have dark flukes, and some of others have more white flukes. So the ones that have dark flukes get white scars, and the white ones get dark scars, as you can see in these pictures. And while these markings can change over the time, the patterns are fairly well established by the time of the when the whale has 2 or 3 years old. Until very recently, to make the ID or a match of a picture of a whale, it took a while, a very long time to do it, because you have, or the volunteers most of the time, and interns, they have to be checking and comparing the different tails pictures that they have on the catalogs, and make the cross-reference with the new picture that they had in their hands. So of course it took a very long time. It was a very long process. But in 2014, we had Ted and Ken Sutherland coming to the scene. So Ted, do you want to share us a little bit more about how this idea started?
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, 2014, there were a number of efforts that had gotten pretty far down the road of some kind of computer-assisted ID, various programs that, like, you would go in and characterize pieces of a fluke and that sort of thing. But in terms of actually automating, like, here's a photo, throw it into a system, match it into any possible whale, that just didn't exist. And you know, to me, it seemed like very feasible. I think not long around that time, we had the Boston Marathon bombing, and to me, it was like, okay, we found these 2 people using artificial intelligence and machine learning, found the faces of 2 people in the crowd with millions of photos, not even knowing what they look like. So actually finding a match between 2 whales, well, it shouldn't be very difficult. It just wasn't. It wasn't an easy problem, but just absolutely very doable. But actually doing it, and doing it on the resources available to, marine mammal science, well, that's quite another question. So we kind of started it just as an experiment, like, hey, can we do this? We got some research collaborators to give us a bunch of photos from California, from Antarctica, from Alaska, a whole bunch of whale photos, and started playing around with it. And, kind of the long story short is it took us a couple years to get, or it took us about a year to get some level of image recognition. And we progressed along the way, but it was really in, I guess it was in March of 2019 that we implemented what we have now, where we can pretty confidently, if we have a decent photo of that whale, we have like a 97% chance of finding any potential match if we know that whale, which just is so powerful, because somebody gives us a whale photo and we can readily say that whale is known to science or that whale is new to science. And that process of saying, okay, that whale is new to science, you know, that would take us literally an hour per photo, us in the broader sense. Like one of our collaborators is this group called Allied Whale in the North Atlantic, and also working in Antarctica, where they would take an hour per photo to determine. If they couldn't find that photo, they would search their catalogs twice and say, okay, yes, this is a new whale. It now takes us about 1/10 of a second. So what that's enabled is us building this global database, matching every whale to every other whale, and we've built a data set of about 60,000 individuals.
Wow, that's really, really impressive. And actually, one of the things that I love the most about this project is that you are going to get to know the whale that you have been photographing as individuals. It's not just now a random whale. They have names and you can be tracking them, and it's one of the most amazing things. So we are going to go a little bit deeper into this process. Yeah. But how to take a good picture or ID picture with the whales. So the ideal photo has to be well lit, taken at a minimal angle. So that's why the first two are not very good, and shows all the underside. In the case of the second one, it's not showing the underside. That is why it's not good. But as you can see, the ones below are getting better, right? So these are more examples or how to distinguish a good picture to make this process or the matching, so you can have an idea which kind of photos are good for do the matching process with Happywhale. So how it works, and probably here Ted can help me a little bit more. Happywhale uses state-of-art image processing algorithms to match whale photos with scientific collections, compares photographs submitted by citizen scientists around the world, and cross-referring with known catalogs like he was mentioning Allied Whale, Cascadia, and I put here the FIB catalog. FIB catalog is the catalog of the whales of that visit Banderas Bay, pretty much Puerto Vallarta. And I mentioned this one in particular because it's the one that I have been working during the last 3 or 4 years. And it was created in 1996 by Astrid Fritsch, one of our expedition leaders too. So do you want to go a little bit deeper into this step?
Yeah, well, which do you want to hear? Specifically how whale ID works, or what?
Yeah, the kind of system that you use to make the...
So it's using automated image recognition that's based on machine learning, artificial intelligence. And what this is doing, and I'd be delighted to kind of show some examples now or later, share my screen, but the notion is just what you were saying before in terms of the features. What you have in a humpback whale's tail are features just like, you know, our eyes. When we see someone's face, we don't think, hey, that person has, you know, like a big nose or a square jaw or, you know, such and such colored skin. We just know who it is. Well, that is actually remarkably similar to automated image recognition through machine learning, where if you can imagine what your brain is actually doing for recognition, you're taking a whole lot of different features and comparing it to basically known search images, which we don't we don't talk about, or we don't think about how we know when someone's face, but we have, you know, you see someone, you think, oh, that looks so much like so-and-so, you know, oh, that looks like my cousin. Okay, well, there were similarities, and in this case, maybe it's somewhat genetically related to that person that they remind you of, or not. Maybe it's just a demeanor or something like that. Well, a very similar process is used, and in fact, what we ended up implementing is built on a facial recognition system, but it first locates the whale's tail and in the frame, and then it basically is looking at the features of the tail, the edge, any patterns on the surface, any scarring, any features, and it does this kind of multi-feature categorization of, if you can imagine, like locating it in multi-dimensional space and then saying, okay, based on these features, what are the closest other whales? And the distance to those other whales would, the smaller the distance, the higher the match or the greater the score. So then we end up with, you know, a ranked set of, here's our proposed matches. And if it's above a certain score, we're pretty confident it'll be a match. We do manually every single whale tail we look at. So I have looked at so many thousand whale photos. I have a couple really fantastic colleagues, Marilia and Haley at the moment, mainly, who help me with this. So when you submit some photos to Happywhale, we get a notification, hey, there's a new submission. We get probably 50 submissions a day. And we go through those and we see, you know, what whales are there and also what data has come along with it. Somebody, you know, copies a photo off of Facebook and throws it up there, and we go, well, you know, one, you didn't take the photo, and two, you know, the photo doesn't come in with any details along with it. But if it comes straight out of your camera, it often comes with a date, and many of the newer cameras comes with a location with GPS enabled, and we love that because then we already have, you know, that's a key part of it. I mean, what we're trying to do is make the science accessible, but also make a really high quality product for science. And so we, you know, just as important as the photo is kind of the supporting information about it. Where were you? When were you there? And to a certain extent, we really want to know who you were with. Like, were you on a whale watch trip with a certain operator? Or a lot of our data comes from research collaborators. And a lot of times what we'll see is we get a photo from, you know, about a whale, we'll get a match and we'll find out, oh, wow, that's a whale that hasn't been seen, you know, since, you know, 4 months ago when that whale had a calf. Does that whale still have a calf with it? That kind of observation that, you know, increasingly our research collaborators are looking out for, hey, I'm eager to see the next time this whale is seen, does she still have her calf with her? Or the last time this whale was seen, it was entangled. Are we ever going to see that whale again? Did it survive the entanglement? That kind of actually conservation critical issue. So, yeah.
Good. Excellent. A lot of information that we can get from only one picture, right?
Yes.
So what do you need as a guest or a whale watching traveler? So you need to take photos of your marine mammal encounters and submit them. To submit them, you need to create an account at happywhale.com. And as Ted was saying, they are going to be making the comparisons or the cross references with the catalogs and the information that they have to identify the whales by their unique markings. And after that, Happywhale is going to be tracking your whales around the globe. So this part is the one I love because it's really amazing to have the full story about it. So to submit a photo, you have to do it without editing the photo. And as Ted was saying, it's really important to put as much information as you can. If you have the date, if you have the name of the vessel or the company that you were doing the whale watching. The location, it's quite easy, as he was saying, with new cameras. But if you don't have a new camera, the thing that you can do, for example, is to open your smartphone into the Compass app. And as you can see here, you can have the exact, well, probably not very exact, but precise location or similar, and the description, sorry, of the encounter. So the description of the encounter would be, for example, if it was a whale that was traveling along, or if you saw a mom with a calf and an escort, or it was a courtship group. All that kind of information helps a lot to science. So about making the match, well, this is pretty much what Ted was mentioning, that they use a Google competition winning algorithm, and it allows them to make a match around 99% of the time in a very short time if you compare when they do it manually. As he was mentioning also, every time they have a confirmed match, or some options, they are going to make the full confirmation manually. And when the photo quality is good and there is no match found, the whale is deemed as new to science and is added to the database. So when you have a notification of a new to science whale, believe me, guys, it's one of the best gifts on this earth. It's so exciting because well, it's pretty much similar to discovering something. So it's really amazing. About the notifications that Happywhale is going to be sending you, is like in this format. They are going to be sending to your email, or you can see the notifications on your account on the website. They are going to send you the name or the code of the whale when it was identified and when you have the last encounter. For example, in this case with this whale, someone saw the same whale like 5 days later than I did. With this other one, someone did it before I did, so 2 years before. So this help us to be tracking, as Ted was saying, tracking the whales and see if they are coming to the same places, if the fidelity is in the same average, or if it's changing, if they have no calves. So pretty much what is happening with them. And that is why I want to share this example. Batman is one of my favorite whales that I have been seeing during the last years in Puerto Vallarta, or in Banderas Bay. As you can see, the shape of the tail, it looks like a Batman sign, so that's why it's one of my favorites. It's a male. It has been also in the local catalog, but also with Happywhale. The first time they saw this whale, it was in 1995, and the last time was this year, 2021, 2021, sorry. And so that means that this whale has at least 25 years old. I have seen him in a lot of courting displays. It's a very active whale. And as you can see, has been traveling near Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta, has been seen in La Paz or Baja, also here in California. So it gives you a lot of information of what are these whales doing pretty much year-round. And it's very, very, very amazing to have this information. About matching success rates, we are going to be talking a little bit about the quality of the images. So as you can see, in this kind or this quality, 865 pixel width, it's quite clear. You can see very well the markings and the scars, and allows them to make a 99% matching success. When the quality starts to drop at 108, for example, you can still see some of the details, but it starts to be very blurry. But still, you can have 99%. But in this other case, 54 pixel width, we are dropping to the 50% matching success. So what happens when you have this kind of pictures, Ted? Do you continue with the matching process, or do you stop it here?
Yeah, we'll try. And some of those pictures, I mean, the tough thing is like on the middle on the left side, an all black photo like that, we might find the right match, but we can't visually confirm it, right? So if it's a really distinct fluke, so quite frankly, people, I mean, I'm not terribly fond of photos from iPhones or whatever because two things. One, it's really important to not like say like, oh, I'm getting a photo for science, so I'm going closer, and some people will unfortunately take that excuse to charge up on the whale. Hopefully, first and foremost is responsible whale watching practices here. But the other thing is, yeah, it's just the quality of the image is all too often a bit sparse, such that yes, maybe we can identify the whale, but also ultimately when we use this for some kind of research use, we'll have to quality filter the data. So really, it's really what I want to see are images from at least a small telephoto lens. Yeah, sometimes we can. I mean, it's been awesome to be able to use these lower quality photos sometimes, not so much to get images from iPhones, but like if you're out at sea in the Antarctic or someplace remote and you see whales far away and someone, even with really high quality camera gear, the whale's far away and we get the best picture we can get and yet able to identify. We found some matches from a cruise in a really remote, a research cruise from Australian government in a really remote part of Antarctica that we're able to confirm matches to East Coast Australia, which was quite a treat. And yeah, I mean, you look at the pictures and they were a bit like this, like they were just tiny in the frame, but we're still able to use them. So yeah, we will proceed as far as we can, but there's kind of a difference, right? So we say, yes, that's a match, but if we can't confirm it's a match, our ability to say, yeah, your whale's new to science, and that's not, that's not so realistic because we can't be confident in that.
Okay, good to know. So this is pretty much numbers of these beautiful projects around the world. So as of November 2019, Happywhale has received more than 270,000 images from citizen scientists and researchers, and they have identified more than 30,000 unique whales in more than 70,000 ID'd encounters. So that sounds pretty awesome, Ted. Would you want to tell us a little bit more about these numbers?
Yeah, well, sorry, I should have caught this when reviewing it. It's actually more like 60,000 unique whales now. It's really, we've had a few research collaborators who've, based on seeing this, have gathered together data collections from the last literally 50 years. We had someone submitted a photo from 1972, actually taken off of a whaling ship. Right, so this was a whale that didn't get killed; it got photographed instead, and the whale had been seen later after the end of whaling. Lucky individual, but yeah, I mean, to me, I've always expected. First off, I didn't really necessarily expect it to work as well as it has, but even more than that, I really have been surprised that as this has continued growing, we still compared every single photo to every other whale that we've seen, which has been a treat. We've seen such things as a whale from East Coast Australia has matched to Brazil, which is crossing, several population boundaries and things like this, where we're starting to see patterns. I mean, you can see in that map there, very distinct patterns. It's mostly humpback whales. There are some other species whose migratory patterns we're tracking, but there's very distinct patterns, but also other things going on, more complex behaviors, like it appears maybe juveniles dispersing at certain times in their lives when they're more likely to change populations, and things like that have really strong implications for the health of the species with changing oceans. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's for sure. But that is also why is the importance of sharing the pictures every time they go on while watching. And this is also the kind of the stories that you can tell by analyzing a little bit more the data that you have. You can tell at least some of the longest encounters that you have on your database. For example, this is from Trans-Pacific. That was the name of this whale that he has photographed in Tonga in 2010, and then in Costa Rica in 2018. So that's a pretty long distance. We are talking about more than 6,000 miles. So it's quite impressive how long, how they can distribute around the world, right?
Yeah, well, you think about it like what, imagine if you went 6,000 miles to find a mate, or in this case, I mean, these are both breeding habitats, right? So that whale probably went to Antarctica in between, right? And 8 years apart, we don't necessarily know. Did this whale relocate? Was it born in Tonga and then grew up and decided to go to mating grounds in Panama or Costa Rica rather? So these kinds of we've been able to gather increasing numbers of these, so we can start to see what triggers and why and when do whales change habitats. And I think kind of one of the big, to me, like getting this kind of database together is great and it's really neat, but it's really, what does this teach us? What can we learn from it? What does it enable in terms of making the oceans a healthier place for the whales? In Alaska, I think most people here will have heard about the blob, which was this large marine heat wave. It's the largest marine heat wave ever recorded. And up in Southeast Alaska, there were almost no calves that showed up in the years when the blob was there, 2014, 2016, and especially for like Glacier Bay, they're left asking, where did their whales go? There's still a number of whales that they were really hoping that we would find that some of their whales had relocated, and we found a few of them. Mostly we've helped them answer that their whales, those that didn't return, probably died because of the event. But these kinds of questions, I think, are the really important stuff, is that, whales in a big ocean, it's important to study them locally, but by working together, and especially with the advent of the citizen science in it, we have this much more comprehensive data set. It's proving really powerful.
Great. Yeah, you can see it on a bigger scale, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So also about the longest time between sightings, probably this is the case that you were telling us before about the whale that someone submitted in 1977, and they saw it 40 years later. That was the one, or this is another one?
This was a different whale. Yeah, no, that was, but actually happened just about a week or two ago. But this kind of thing, like some of the oldest whales that we know, we don't actually know how long a humpback whale lives. And so there's some individuals that were photographed in the North Pacific in the early 70s. There's one whale called Old Timer that we're still seeing. I think, let's see, Old Timer was first photographed in like 1977 by one of the pioneers of the whole technique of just understanding that you can recognize individuals in photographs. Just pulling up the record here. Yeah, first photographed in 1972, sorry, and we saw this whale back in December, so nearly 50 years old. And each additional sighting adds this, basically the oldest known living humpback right now. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's also, I think, really fun to see them as individuals rather than, a whale. Rather than that, like you say, you're really fond of Batman and of his behavior, and that kind of thing really builds a story and builds a value. Yeah.
Yes, that's pretty awesome. So what about other species? I heard that you have a very nice discovery with the right whales.
Yeah, that was exciting. So once we built this platform that's pretty effective in terms of getting citizen science data, we've had a number of different research collaborators that say, hey, can you gather photos of southern right whales, of blue whales, of leopard seals, of, there's quite a few different species where when we get photos of those individuals, sometimes like southern right whales, depending on where they are, will contact research collaborators immediately, or North Pacific right whales, an extremely endangered species, and others like with fin whales in the West Coast of North America, once a year we'll give the data to a research collaborator. So we've been increasingly gathering just images from, because it's a centralized place and the researchers know that we're doing quality control of the data. So like killer whales that you have on the screen there, they are individually identifiable. Automated image recognition is not something we've yet implemented for them, but we have a colleague, Emma Luck is her name, who's actively, she goes in, and when we get a submission, we'll assign that submission to her. So she goes and logs in and she sees, oh, here's all the new killer whale sightings, and she matches them against known catalogs. So by now we've come up with, oh gosh, I mean, we have photos of hundreds of individual killer whales. I could look that up in a moment here, but which is cool. Then you have another very long live, very complex behavior, very complex social structure animal, and it's possible to track them through time and space in the same way as with humpbacks. And hopefully over the next year or couple of years, we'll have image recognition for a number of these species as well. Yeah, case of facial recognition of bottlenose dolphins.
Yes, that sounds quite impressive too. And well, not only whales then, also other kind of species, like leopard seals.
Yeah, leopard seals are an interesting one, right? Where we, their dispersal and dynamics is really known just from, like, you put a tag on an individual and each tag is, $1,000 or something quite expensive, right? So you are limited in the number of samples that you get. So if you think about it in the broader spectrum, right, there's a number of ways to study these animals and their behavior. Back, 50 years ago, it was novel that, there was, like, one of my heroes, this guy, Hal Whitehead, he's a sperm whale researcher. He and his partner, Luke Rendell, they basically pioneered that you don't have to kill sperm whales to study them, that you can actually study them in the field. And that, that used to be the way that whale science was done, and science for many species was you shot the thing and then you studied the dead carcass of it, right? So we've evolved from that, but there's quite a few different techniques. There's everything from a very short term, like you could put a suction cup tag on a whale and follow it for a few hours or a couple of days, maybe if you're lucky, where it's tracking in very, very fine detail where and how the animal is moving underwater. That has brought us really incredible insight in the movement of whales around their feeding, but it doesn't tell us about, their migration. Then somewhere down the line, there's like satellite tags where you stick this onto the whale with a little bit of a barbed hook, or with seals, you can glue it onto their back, and you never recover the tag, but it sends data off to a satellite. So that might stay on the animal for a few months until their molting pushes it, until shedding pushes it out of the skin, or with the case of seals, they molt their fur and the glued on thing falls off. Well, you get a lot of data, but with a photo ID, we get over years and years and years, over the whole lifetime of the animal. So we might learn how this animal is moving, like in the case of a leopard seal across the Antarctic Peninsula. Leopard seals in the photos above, you can see, it's pretty hard to see, but there's some of those markings like just below and to the right of the eye, or to the left of the eye on the seal. You can see those markings on the fur. They're the same individual in two different sightings. So that animal can be tracked over time, and it's difficult to do. It takes a trained eye, but in time we'll automate this. And so actually right now, that's one of the pieces that we're trying to do, is get together enough images that we can automate it, which will be super powerful and super exciting, because You know, just remarkably little is known about these animals, and yet they're living in the places that their environment is changing more rapidly than anywhere else really on the planet. That and the edge of the ice edge in the Arctic changing so rapidly. So that will for sure have an impact on the animals. And unless we can see it, you know, how can we, you know, understand what's going on with them?
Exactly. And the most important thing is that taking a picture is not invasive, so it's even better. Great.
Yeah,
good.
Very fond of that, right? So, you know, which, I mean, to me, it's important. Like, let's make sure that our photographing isn't invasive. I appreciate, you know, Natural Habitat's got a reputation for responsible tourism. That's something that's super important to me when I'm out there driving my Zodiac. Like, someone's like, oh, I want to get closer, closer, closer. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm fond of getting closer, but it's better if we let the animal come to us. We get better pictures when the animal's doing its natural behavior and the photography is not invasive. It's, it's definitely a powerful technique that you don't have to shoot the animal for or even touch it. So.
No, definitely not. So yes, one of the most important things is also to do it in a non-invasive way. There are many rules to follow when you are doing whale watching, and of course we are against bad actions against the whales. They're fair. One of the most important things is safety, and because if they are safe, we are safe, and we are all happy, right? In this kind of activities. So other ways to support Happywhale besides sharing your photos, well, one is after uploading a photo, if you have an unnamed whale or new to science, you can actually adopt and name that whale. So that would be quite awesome to have a whale with a name that you choose. Or of course, donations are very important too. You want to add something to this part, Ted?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's hugely appreciated. Thank you. I love the naming and adopting of a whale. We basically ask that if someone wants to name and adopt a whale and make a donation to conservation science, it doesn't have to be us. We're really interested in people contributing to, you know, I mean, unfortunately, marine conservation, it's just not funded in the way, you know, we value it and then we don't put our money behind it. Such as it is, it's one of these things that's easy to appreciate and maybe sometimes easy to overlook supporting. So we do ask for a donation for naming and adopting a whale. This has been pretty enabling, where we work with a nonprofit and actually they're in Mexico, not far from Banderas Bay, a community-supported conservation or community-run conservation organization as a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. And you know, the cool thing about that is then you track your whale. Every time you see that whale is seen again, we'll send you a notification. Hey, you know, your whale's been seen, which might be in Mexico, it might be coastal California, anywhere on their migration. It might be that they have a new calf or other life events. And in the course of this, I find it quite fun and exciting.
Yes, it certainly is. I really enjoy that part, so it's one of my favorites.
Nice.
So I think it's time of the questions, the Q&As. So Kendall, can you be so kind of helping me to switch the screen, please?
Absolutely, I'll do that right now.
Thank you so much. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, well, okay, so I think folks can see my screen now.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to, you know, answer any questions. I can just bring up examples to illustrate. So go ahead.
Absolutely, and this is really exciting. I'm really happy you're able to share this with us, Ted. All right, before we start the Q&A, I just want to remind everyone watching, if you have a question today, you can submit that in your control panel under the questions field. All right, a lot of great questions today. First one I'm going to ask is, why is the underside of the tail so much more preferable?
Oh yeah, okay. So that's a super good question. And it's just, it's like we're much more recognizable by the front of our face rather than the back of our heads. You know, that's where the features are. And it's a funny thing with humpback whales. The underside has pigmentation here. Actually, I was just going through some images recently, and there was some like, sorry, I'm just flipping through. This is what the top side, the dorsal surface of the tail looks like in almost every whale. So every humpback whale. So yes, there is a distinct trailing edge still, but it lacks the pattern that we see on the underside of the tail. So here on the underside of the tail, you see barnacle scars. You see this is, excuse me, this is probably a calf or a juvenile. You see natural pigmentation. You see scars from, bumping into things and might be bumping into other whales or entanglements. Sometimes you see killer whale markings, and they happen to scar. Most individuals will scar white on black and black on white. So they just basically develop characteristics, usually in the first couple of years, or they have natural pigmentation. Plus there's this trailing edge that makes them very identifiable, and they will usually raise their tail when they dive, so it's a readily presented. It's like, our faces are both recognizable and readily presented. It might be, say, that our shoulder blades are equally identifiable, but we don't show them very much. Well, same thing with the whales. Their pectoral fins. There was a picture of one whale's pectoral fin in here. Where was that? Sorry. Oh, that's a tail. Shoot, I don't have a picture handy. But their pectoral fins can often be quite identifiable. They have these huge 15-foot long pectoral fins, but they don't show them very often, and they don't show them in a consistent way like this tail that sets them up well for either human or machine identification. That's why.
So someone here noted that whales have collisions with boats in the shipping lanes off of California and will end up on beaches. And they're just wondering if anyone tracks that dead individual.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually something I get photos of pretty frequently, unfortunately, is, hey, there's a stranded whale. Can you identify the individual? In California, actually, the photos usually don't come to me. There's a collaborator who works with the California Entanglement Response and Stranding Network, and she has access to the system, and she's trying to identify them. But it's actually tracked pretty closely, but it's really hard to follow up on because, one, if a humpback whale is hit by a ship, probably it's going to sink. If a blue whale is hit by a ship, or a fin whale or a minke whale, almost certainly it's going to sink. So sometimes those animals will actually bloat and then float up and then come to shore, or sometimes they're hit by a ship and they'll stay on the bow of a ship. But we figure there's enough ship strikes in California that it is causing the blue whale population to not completely recover from whaling. It's really hard to know. So what I'm psyched about, what I'm excited about with this much data is, yeah, we aren't going to be able to track every individual, but if we get enough data together, we can start to see, this in this area with more shipping or more, pot fisheries, for example, we have a lower survivorship rate. That's pretty hard to do, but we're starting to get to the place where we have enough data that we can do some statistical modeling to understand it. So there's lots of different ways to track it. We also see scars on whales from ship strikes or from entanglements. Of course, that means the whale survived. We're not seeing the scars on the whales that didn't survive.
So earlier you had mentioned referencing older photographs, and someone just submitted a question wondering how far back would you want these pictures, or should this person only plan on sending current photos?
Yeah, I love historic photos. Actually, that's for me one of the little silver linings for COVID has been that a lot of people that promise, research collaborators especially, that have promised, oh yeah, this 10 years of data, we'll get it to you, and then suddenly we're all on lockdown, and that project that was always being pushed aside happened, and we've had a flood of historic images there's no time limit. That's the harder thing is the older the image is, sometimes the less likely you are to know. We don't need to know the GPS coordinates, right? But if you have a photo and you have no idea where it's from, doesn't, or when it's from, doesn't do us much good. If you know you were out of Monterey Bay and it was in 2005, great, that's enough, right? At least knowing the year, we prefer to know the exact date, but at least knowing the year, the season, at least knowing the region, okay, Southern California or East Coast Australia or something like that. The more precision, the better, but there's no limit to the date range that we're interested in.
Awesome. So someone's wondering if they were to submit a photo and their whale was identified, and then other people also submit photos of that same whale, are they able to see other people's photographs of that whale?
Yeah, we do have some research collaborators who have data hidden behind a privacy wall, but it's kind of a minority case. Fortunately, I'm very fond of having the data publicly visible. So like let's take one of our best known whales, a whale named Fran here in California. Let's see, here we go. Fran has been seen. What do we have? 175 different sightings of Fran, almost all of them in Monterey Bay, one off of the Farallon Islands, and then 7 sightings down in Mexico. And Fran's been seen by all these different folks, and then there's another set of folks that were on the boat at the time, and they registered with us. Hey, I was on this whale watch trip, but they didn't photograph Fran in there. So. And yeah, the photos are there, and so but people can put copyright, registration on their account so that we know, okay, you don't want us to use this for certain things. Most folks do allow us open access to their photos, so that we can do with them as we may need for research. And you can see, here's a lot of different photos of Fran from lots of different contributors here along the bottom. You see the contributor, Vallarta Adventures right there where you work, Lilia. So yes, and I think that public aspect of it, it's a lot of fun. Two, it actually makes for better data, because then if something is out of line, other people are looking at it and they say, hey, Fran, let's say we made a mistake and we recorded a photo of Fran in Australia. Somebody would tell us, hey, that's not correct, or did that really happen? Sometimes the answer is yes, not from California to Australia. That's never happened, but something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So earlier you had mentioned something about the juvenile markings, and so someone was just curious if there's an age at which the markings are set for life, or how often do they change, and at what age do you generally start identifying whales?
Yeah, good question. We are trying to figure that out to an extent. I'm trying to think of the name of this one little whale. Got 2 different names, and I'm drawing a blank right now. Shoot, I'm not thinking of it. But in the first couple of years, so one of the fun things with this image recognition is that so we did a bunch of our accuracy assessment using data from Glacier Bay National Park, and this is going to take a little while to load because it's such a huge data set. So pause while I'm talking, it'll dig up the 10,000 encounters. But so Glacier Bay National Park, they have photographed every single whale that they can. They have a dedicated whale biologist. She's funded by Janet Nielsen's her name. She's funded by the tourism revenue from the ships coming into Glacier Bay National Park. And so they make an effort to identify every single humpback whale coming in there. And so they'd photograph basically every calf coming in, and she happens to be very, very detail oriented. And so we found almost no errors in her data set. But one of the things we did find, I wouldn't call it an error, but matches missed, is we found, shoot, I mean, this doesn't mean so much because there's just so many photos. But one of the things we found was calf to adult photographs where they hadn't, it was sort of first summer calves to adult individuals where you could see, once you were pointed out, hey, this is the same whale, you would see, that yes, that's the case. But I'm gonna.
Venus and vertigo.
What's that?
Is the case of Venus and vertigo?
Yes, thank you. That's actually the individual I was trying to think of. Vertigo. That's a great case. Vertigo, aka Pepper, got two names because the whale was named Pepper as a calf because it had this really bad-looking skin condition. Let's see if we can find Pepper as a calf. So there's the tail as a calf. And then, and you can see, actually take note of where these barnacle scars are on there. And then a few years later, there's the same barnacle scars, but then the pattern is filled in. Usually as a calf to like just newborn to first summer, we know that we can sometimes find those matches, and then first summer to adult, we can often find those matches, but we don't really know how accurate we are because it's hard to know about which matches you're missing, right? But it's like by about a year to 2 years old, their tails are pretty consistent. Most of these scars, I mean, those barnacles were probably maybe 4 centimeters, 2 inches across, but by the time the whale is an adult, they'll actually grow with the tail so that the scars might be 4 or 5 inches across. So I think there's some other calf photos in here. Let me see if any of them come up quickly. We have a lot of pictures of this individual. It's in Monterey Bay. Oh, there we go. So there you see, there's those barnacles, and then as an adult. So probably 2 years quite consistently. Usually from the first 6 months to a year, we can see them as adult. But we do have some individuals that change pretty dramatically after a year. After like 4 or 5 years. And why that is, I don't know. And then also what you can get is a whale gets into a major entanglement or a ship strike. That'll change things pretty dramatically. Let me try to think of a name of some of these whales that just have massive ship strikes. I'll think of a name of one that has just totally chopped up. But that'll change things. But yet usually we're able to spot it on through past the entanglement.
Yeah, there is one CRC 1222 number 3 that also has a very dramatic.
Oh gosh, yeah, fingers, right. Yeah, here's a case of a whale that it lost the left tip of its fluke, and I think we have some so there you go. There was the tail beforehand, and then it got hit by probably a small like a day trip whale watch boat or a fishing vessel, and chopped off that left tip of the tail, and whale seems to be doing fine. This photo, I'm not sure what year that's from, but we could look here at the date history. So 2006, and then not seen for 11 years. And somewhere between 2006, when it had that nice full tail, seen in Monterey Bay, and then 2017, seen again, missing part of the tail.
Wow, those are some great examples. Wow, yeah, it's incredible. All right, well, we're just past the top of the hour, so I'm just going to ask you 2 final questions, Ted. I'm going to combine them into one, and then we'll call it for the day. Someone's really curious as to how you got interested in image recognition technology, and someone else wants to know, what is the most surprising thing you've discovered?
How interesting. I got interested in this just says like, I'm not a machine learning person actually, and I think Lilia, you mentioned it was a winning Google competition. We basically had a Google supported algorithm development competition, which is what produced the algorithm that we implemented. That's its own long story, but I'm a biologist, right? So I was just looking at like, how can we improve upon the tools? My father was a zoology professor. My mother was a keen bird watcher. I grew up joining and then leading nature expeditions, especially as I mentioned to Antarctica. So really, it was just the love of the sea and wanting to know more about it. I think if I had a superpower, it would be to be able to see through the water and see everything that's happening underwater, because it's just this kind of big mysterious space. Although maybe it's the mystery that keeps me coming back. But eventually I got over getting seasick, and that's enabled me to spend a lot more time with whales and just wanting to know more about them. And I grew up next to Silicon Valley, so the notion of, hey, we can do better than taking an hour looking at 2 photos to try to find the individual, or looking through thousands of photos manually. That seems pretty obvious, and using tools to do better with the potential effort out there. It's just the potential. It was one of these things of seeing, here's the potential, here's where we want to be. Can I do something to bridge that gap? And really wanting it to be a resource for the public, something to know more about the whales. Sorry, what was the other half of the question? Totally forgot.
What's the most surprising thing that you've encountered during this time?
I mean, some of these really long migrations have been surprising, but I guess it was really neat. This biologist, John Kalmbakidis, I was listening to a podcast he did not so long ago. He's been one of our biggest collaborators from the beginning. He's kind of a central feature in our understanding of large whales in the US West Coast. He talks about how great it is to make a scientific discovery, because there's this little moment in time when you're the only person in the world who knows that. And I guess I've felt that quite a lot here, where it's like, whoa, hey, here's a whale that went from Australia to the West Coast, to the East Coast of South America. Or I think for me, the interesting thing with humpbacks is like, by their patterns of migration, we also see elements of their culture. And over the course of this, I've learned, I mean, I don't know if you can see I'm not sure. Let's see, I'll stop my screen sharing here. You can see the photos behind me, this sperm whale and humpback whales. These are animals with extremely rich and diverse behaviors, and just learning their culture a bit. And it's really difficult to see into the ocean, to see into the way that these whales live and their lives and all this, but and then also to see our impact on them. Unfortunately, I think one of the biggest surprises is how severely we are changing their world. And I don't want to end on a downer, but that urbanization of the ocean has motivated me to do more, even while oftentimes disturbing me. I mean, you see something like that, a ship strike, well, this whale survived, but a lot of whales don't. So I couldn't point to any one thing, but boy, it's just it's every page I turn, I realize that there is 10 more behind it that I didn't expect were there, in terms of the depth of the story here. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. This was so interesting. It's so cool what you guys are doing, and I know a lot of the people who are watching are really interested in participating. So thank you so much for taking the time to present today. I'd like to hand it back over to both of you for closing comments, and we'll start with Ted.
Oh, cheers. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, really delighted. And it's a lot of fun, oftentimes that people say, oh, well, look, there's that many thousand photos. What are mine going to do? And sometimes it's that one photo that's the whale that we haven't seen since it was last entangled. And, I get to send it off to the entanglement response team and say, hey, this whale is still alive. That kind of thing. So please, take the time, dig out those photographs. They'll almost always be something pretty worthwhile and special to be learned. If you've been out there among marine mammals, photographing them. I mean, we're interested in killer whales and humpback whales, obviously, but also just about any other marine species that that you have, any other marine mammal that you have images of. So please, yeah, participate. It's cool.
Great. Lilia?
Thank you so much, Ted, for accepting this invitation. It was really, really an honor to have you here, sharing all that information with us, with our natural habitats guests. And well, guys, it's the perfect invitation to keep photographing the whales and uploading your pictures to Happywhale. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, you too. And for anyone interested in traveling to see the whales, visit our website, give us a call, or send us an email. You can see that contact information on the screen. We're always happy to answer any questions. I'd also like to thank everyone for watching today. Do join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.